Welcome to Just Relationships, the show that offers you concrete ways to make your relationships better. Whether it's your boss, your spouse, your children, or your friends, the quality of your relationships in life directly affects how you feel about yourself and the success you achieve. Your host, Dr. Duffy Spencer, a psychotherapist, telecoach, author, and seminar leader, will interview top experts to help you learn to manage this essential part of your life. And now, here's your host, Dr. Duffy Spencer.
Greetings. Welcome to Just Relationships. We are so thrilled to be with Marcia Meislin again. This is the second part of a two-part series about living a life, living your life without shoulds, And what on earth does that mean? If I don't do this or that, I'll get in big trouble. I should do this and I should do that or else. So Marcia Meislin, author of The Goodbye Cookie, a wonderful memoir on never giving up. What do you say to that? The idea of, if I live my life without shoulds, I'm going to get in big trouble.
I think the answer to that is that we do need some shoulds in our life. Like we should abstain from crossing the street in traffic. And there are some things we need to be mindful of. Like for me personally, I should not have sugar for so many reasons, least of which is weight. But sugar makes my head crazy. And I go up with sugar, I get this quick sugar high, and then I land with a thumping thud afterwards because I crash. So I have said to myself, I should not have sugar because it's just through experience a better way for me to be. At the same time, I'm a person who likes to take responsibility. I like to be a leader. I like to do a lot of things. So I have a message inside my head. I should take care of my family, my extended family. I should do a lot of volunteer work in my faith community. I should be politically active, especially in terms of social injustice, things like that. I should do more for my body. I should do more for on and on and on and on. And if I were to actually do all those things all the time, there would be nothing left of me. I would be completely burnt out, depleted. And actually, when I get depleted is when I really go running to the kitchen for some quick fix. So not only because I don't want to be binging my brains out because I've depleted myself thinking that that's going to replenish me, but just in general, I'm at the point in my life where I want to be able to assess what I'm doing and how I'm using my time and what my values are and how much running around I want to do and how much trying to do it all, if that's still important to me. So I'm better able now to say this particular thing feels important to me today. This particular thing doesn't. And sometimes I look at my calendar and people will give me feedback. Marcia, there's no white space in your calendar. There's no downtime.
Yes.
I like it this way. But in fact, when a few days like that, and I'm just crash and burn, I just want to do nothing, or I just want to numb out. So I'm learning through trial and error. And I'm not great at this particular exercise of knowing this minute to minute, how much I can do, how much I can't do, how much uptime I have, how much downtime I have, how much burnout when am I going to get the signals that I'm burning out too much? And I also feel not only an obligation, but a privilege. I am a person of privilege, and I feel like I need to use that privilege to be more helpful or to do more service. But at some point, it becomes a negative return for myself. And then I can't be of great service to others. So that's a constant battle for me.
Wow. Beautiful. I'm so glad I asked. I love how you put that, a person of privilege. And so many people look at the glass half empty, not half full. And everything you've said so far today and last week was all about, you didn't use the word, but it was about gratitude and appreciation. And, you know, the book, White Privilege, and then White Fragility, that so many white people never knew they had the privilege of being white. And I could look at myself as a female with a family that was alcoholic and with a father that was a New York City cop. And in those days, they didn't make as much money as they make now. And my mother used to always say, well, you know, it's the night before payday, so we're having hard-boiled eggs and spinach and potatoes for dinner, and tomorrow we get to have hamburger. And, you know, living that kind of life, putting myself through school, waiting on tables, City University, I really did not think of myself as a person with privilege, and now I do. Now I definitely see where I am privileged, and this brings up such a gratitude in me and such compassion for others who don't have that, who have discrimination through nothing to do with their morality, just because of how they look or who they are. And of course, poverty is so incendiary, and it's so multi-generational. It's such a toxic cycle. Poverty and discrimination. So, you know, the idea of living our lives according to wants and to be able to separate out obligations and obligations. Historically, I have done a lot of seminars on holiday stress. And that's one of the themes that I've always talked about is, yes, we have obligations. And we don't have to put so many ornaments around, but we still have to see grandma in the rehab or whatever that is. So how do you distinguish? You know, there is a term called necessitating, and people who score high on necessitating score very high on stress. And necessitating means that it is necessary for me to do anything and everything that anyone expects of me. Somebody asks me something, oh my goodness, it's absolutely necessary for me to do it. I am bereft of choice. And by the way, if I say no, I feel guilty, which was the name of the seminal book in the assertiveness training field. And the author assumed, Dr. Manuel Smith, oh, read my book and you will be able to say no and not feel guilty. Well, that's not how it works because we can change ourselves into new behavior more easily than rethink our emotions and how we see things. So the deal is, in transition, we get to say no and feel guilty. Right? So, and many people cannot tolerate that in between, that transitional state. So they go back to saying yes and feeling resentful. So we are in great transition now, and I think we will continue to be in great transition. And when you talked about in last week's show, being gentle with yourself and starting new routines, and at the time after we were first in lockdown, I was upset because I'm not technically oriented, and I had to do all these technical things. I'd lose my livelihood if I didn't master Zoom, and it just so many things. And I hated it. I always avoided technology as much as I could, and have a wonderful assistant who has done all that for me. And with her working virtually, she was a lot less accessible to me. So I had to learn it. So there's the stress of that. And then just creating new systems. And at the time, I did, and I was feeling dysregulated. My sister even came to visit me from Ecuador, and the house did not look as good as it usually looks. And also, I was unfortunately had some illness. But I felt badly. She commented on it, and I said, well, I'm doing the best I can. And then a few months later, it was, in retrospect, oh, well, of course, I was going through a lot of changes. I didn't have any energy, and I didn't know what I was doing while I was in that transitional phase. And now I've gotten into some really good routines, which I did in the beginning. They were just harder to contrive. And so I think that's so important, that with change comes dysregulation, and that we do have to be gentle with ourselves and to stay intentional. What changes do we want? As you say, what do we choose if we live our lives without shoulds? Okay, now you're the guest, so I'd better stop talking.
So, from here, yes. I think being in COVID was an adjustment for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
I was used to certain supports and resources. I also had an assistant who did my paperwork because it happens to be a very poor skill of mine. And I had to do all my own paperwork, and I have a brother who I have to do all his paperwork. And I was tearing my hair out because it was really forcing me to be so disciplined. And every time I would look at that paperwork, I would want to run away. And in the past, I would go eat a cookie or 10 cookies or the whole bag. But trying not to do that, maybe at other times I would say, you know what, I'm not doing paperwork, I'm going shopping, or I'm going to visit a friend for coffee. I couldn't have all those running away safety valves. I had to stare at that pile of paperwork till I did it. I didn't have somebody to help me with it. And I realized that while it's perhaps not going to be my greatest contribution in life, as no one would ever come to me and say, oh, you're the person who does great paperwork. But I did it, and I forced myself to do it. And I did it in little chunks, and I did it in a balanced way. And I made deals with myself. You do an hour of paperwork, then you can go dance or read a book or binge watch something on Netflix. But you have to do it. You don't have any other choice. And I'm sure that's what it was like in prehistoric times. You know, these women in the caves couldn't hire someone to go cook for them or to do their paperwork for them. They have to do their own hieroglyphics. So, it's a good lesson for all of us on humility.
Yes, so there's that distinction again between the shoulds and the coulds. You have to do your brother's paperwork. You have to do your own. And that is one secret to change in change theory, incremental change. You said little chunks, because the primitive brain cannot tolerate a lot of change, no matter even if it's good change, because it's just too threatening, it's too foreign, it's too different. So we have to change slowly with intentionality from our new brain to allow our old brain to catch up and not to assume automatically that it's dangerous, to feel less threatened, And the idea of breaks, of fun breaks, the idea of deals with myself, I think of that as healthy self-parenting. You take that part of you, that younger part, usually that child part or whatever you want to call it, and you say, I know you don't want to do this, and I'm going to help you, and we're going to do it just for a little while, and I will be with you the whole time, and after we do this, then we're going to go out and take a walk. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people have not learned the fine art of self-parenting. And this is what I teach my clients as a psychotherapist. And when we don't have healthy self-attachments, certainly we can't have healthy attachment with others. And many people have had, in the psychology theory, it's called faulty attachments. So they don't know how to take care of themselves literally. So they go to that default pattern of, just as you've been talking about, stopping the pain, numbing yourself, having one cookie or 10 or the whole bag. I love how you put that. And saying no, boss, Italian boss, Swahili boss, basto, I think in Italian, and enough. Like, I do not want to go there. I will not go there. And you talked about how in last time, how how sugar is bad for your body. And I'm just thinking about how many people are so subtle, and they will say, oh, you can have just one dessert. There's nothing wrong with having one dessert. They wouldn't say that to an alcoholic.
Right. But I just want to clarify, that's the way it is for me. Sugar doesn't work well for me because I can't stop after.
Right.
There are people who are getting through this pandemic by having a piece of chocolate every morning, every night, whatever it is they're doing, which I'm not judging, and it's fine.
Yes.
So I think the beauty in this conversation is that we all need to go within and really check in with ourselves and say, what's working for me and what's not working for me? And this whole notion of the shoulds is, if I read an article about somebody else who is doing something a certain way and I go, I have to do it that way. But in fact, that may or may not be right for me. And I have to really trust myself and go deep enough inside to say, what do you need? What's healthy? What's not healthy? What's okay? What's going to take you all the way down the rabbit hole? And what's going to take you one step down the rabbit hole? You don't have to go all the way down the rabbit hole. So all of this is a learning and an exploration. And it's another way of saying, be gentle with yourself, because it's no one's going to be able to make those decisions for me, honestly. I have to really put it all together and say, okay, Marcia, this is your life. Like, how are you going to stay healthy in body, mind, spirit, mentally, socially? I also suffer from FOMO, fear of missing out. It's a big thing for me. I kind of battle that all the time. And every day there's a little piece of me that's checking in to say, okay, can I be a little more lenient with myself today? Or do I need to sort of tighten up a little because I've been really going to the edges of what's healthy for me? And these are internal decisions that we all have to make based on self-awareness and really checking in with our bodies. And some people meditate. I could meditate more. I think I said that. Some people meditate. Some people check in. Some people do yoga. Whatever it is that helps each of us to go inside and say, where am I? And how much do I give to the world right now? And how much do I give to myself? And how much do I just take a nap?
Thank you for stopping me with that one, because I can get on my soapbox when it comes to sugar, because I do think that if sugar went on the market today, it would be categorized as a drug. However, there is a genetic predisposition that I have coming from a family of addicts, and many people do have, and many people don't. And it is true that some people can have that in moderation, and preferably with protein, with other nutrients that balance it out. Yes, that is very true. And that is the answer, to go within. And what works for me? And if someone shoulds on you, back to our topic, living a life without shoulds, you should. Well, I hear that works for you. I'm not even sure if it works for me. Let me check in and see if it might work for me. I will take what you're saying under consideration. And that's another piece, which is not to automatically say yes, as in necessitating equals high stress, but also not to automatically say no. Mm-hmm. And being contrary, being what's called oppositional, the oppositional personality. So I'm going to say no to everything versus I'm going to say yes to everything versus I'm going to take a moment for myself and go inside. Go within, as you say, go inside. And if nothing else, this lockdown has forced us to go inside. And having said that, I will say, as a person of privilege, as we've just discussed, some people, the frontline workers, have no time to go inside. Mm-hmm. They just have to because they're needed or because their family needs their income no matter what. So on a daily basis, they put themselves in harm's way. And then there are people who can't get a job or have lost their job as a result. So generally speaking, for all of us, COVID or not COVID, as you said, if we can stop and reflect, as Socrates said, the unreflected life is not worth living. He said the unexamined life is not worth living. And many people literally live and die without ever examining their own psyche, without ever going in. Everything is on rote. Everything is on autopilot. And this is what we want to avoid. And yet I do want to say that it does take time and energy to change. It takes intentionality. And as you mentioned in the last show, we don't know exactly how long it takes to break a habit. The theory is 27 days, 30 days, whatever it is. But that is an intentionality, and that is a discomfort, would you say? Because habits are comfortable. Even toxic habits are comfortable.
I just want to play devil's advocate again.
Yeah.
You complimented me on playing devil's advocate around the sugar thing.
Yeah.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate again here. The unexamined life, as we're talking about it, at a very sort of privileged level, if you will.
Yeah.
But I have come around, I wasn't always like this, but I have come around to a greater acceptance of people who don't choose to live that, quote, unexamined life. I grew up in a community, in a religious community, where not everybody, a lot of people did things because their parents did them and because they thought that was the law, and everybody kind of followed the same path. I rebelled against that, and my family wasn't like that either. But I spent many years in judgment of that kind of rote behavior. And I stayed away from that as much as I could, and I rebelled in every fiber of my body. And now I've come around to saying, who am I to judge? If that behavior of blind faith or rote behavior works for someone else, who am I to judge? And so I'm beginning to soften my stance about the unexamined life is not worth living, like Socrates said. I've also heard that quote a lot. Mm-hmm. And I think in my own growth and development, I need to let that go, because for some people, that is the life that they're choosing to live. There is a choice in there. They're choosing to live in that kind of unexamined life. And how do we really know deep in their souls what they're examining and not examining? And who am I to say that that's better or worse than the life that I have, in which I'm examining pretty much everything all the time? So I just want to say that there's room for all of us under this big umbrella. And I choose to be around people who are constantly examining, because that's my value and I like it, and I prefer those kinds of conversations. But it's okay for me to also let go of the need to try to get people who don't choose to do that to want to all of a sudden question everything. They don't want to question. And who am I to say to them, you should question, because that's another should, isn't it? So
Yes. Very good point, Marcia Meislin. You devil, you. Well, I do think that converts, many people who become converted into these cults or very strict religions are looking for answers, and they don't have it within themselves, and they may never, literally they may never. And there is a real comfort in being told what to do. And then, so there's the conversion theory, and then there's just being born into it. And if it works or it doesn't work. So it is, I personally think it's better to have a balance, again, of what you choose and what you don't choose per se. And there are people who live in the same neighborhoods they were born in, and they have their lifelong friends, and they go to a zillion showers and birthdays and funerals because that's what they do. And I was never like that. And my friends are literally all over the world, but I don't have a local crowd to hang out with for that reason. How often do you and I see each other? Because we live so many miles apart. So it's that kind of thing. So we have to close. This is part 2 of a 2-part series on living without shoulds. And so we leave that open, that it's really a balance, and it is checking within if you can. Some people cannot afford that for various reasons.
Yes.
So, Marcia Meislin, thank you so much for your wisdom, the author of The Goodbye Cookie, a memoir on not giving up and still choosing your life the way you want to live it as much as you can. I thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Duffy.
You're welcome. And this is Dr. Duffy Spencer saying goodbye for now and wishing you great relationships.